Friday afternoon, Gold and Black Live. Not two of my favorite people. Tom has to be because we work together, I suppose. But Dave Shondell, I say this every time, but he calls a spade a spade. He calls you on the carpet, which I like. I think that's why Purdue fans love Dave Shondell. They love his teams, too. He's obviously been extremely successful as Purdue's volleyball coach. Is this year number, well, it seems like year number 100 probably for you just in the last 6 months. But this is year 14?
18.
18. I can't even. I'm having a brain fade. But Coach, welcome to the show. And we've done this many, many times, and this is been a crazy last few months. But tell me from your standpoint, how have you gotten through it, and what has kept you mentally on the path to making sure that it's what's best for your kids, your family, on down the line?
Well, I think, being a head coach of a program at any level is a big responsibility. And so not only are we trying to make sure that we're going to be prepared for the Big Ten Conference when it begins in January, but you've got a lot of young people that are dealing with things that they have not been exposed to ever before. And we have 4 freshmen that came in at a time that it was really a challenge. So our number one responsibility has been to make sure that all of our athletes are doing well, and that we're reaching out to them. And even during a time when some of our staff isn't even here, you got furloughs and you got a lot of things that are going on in an athletic department that I'm not sure a lot of the people even understand what Mike Babinski has had to do to keep this thing afloat. But it hasn't been easy for any of our athletic teams. But our number one responsibility is making sure that our kids are doing well. And quite frankly, they've been resilient. There's been, aside from the COVID-19 and the rest of the stuff that's going on in America right now, they've held up really, really well. And, you would expect that from young people. We have found out that they were not in the physical condition or emotional condition we wanted them to be in, because we weren't around here during the summer nearly as much. Normally our students are here, our volleyball students are here all summer long for the most part, and they're training and working out and conditioning and spending time together. We didn't have that opportunity. And when we did, we found ourselves in quarantine about half the time. So we got off to a slow start. We've been trying to pace our practices so that we're not doing any damage to our athletes physically. And but they're coming along very nicely.
Yeah, Dave, you guys aren't going to play matches for a while. So I guess I'm curious, what are you guys doing now to stay sharp and for that slow, I guess, build up to the start of the season? Because, as you know, it's only late September and you got a long runway to that first match.
Yeah, but we're playing in a conference that is really, really tough.
Yeah.
And you can't waste any days, to be honest. I mean, it's a two-headed monster. One, you've got to make sure that you're not overdoing it, because you do want to make sure your athletes are healthy. And there's certainly a process that we're going through right now to make sure that we're going a little bit harder than we were yesterday, and tomorrow we might go a little bit more than we went today. But you have to also be careful that your kids are in good shape. But you have to get better, because everyone in our league is grinding right now. They're not waiting until December to start pushing the pedal to the metal. And so we got to make sure we're being very efficient in what we do, and we're identifying what our players need to do to get better. And we think that so far we've had a really good 6 or 7 weeks that we've been back here at school and the time we had before school.
Recruiting is one of your strengths, and again, in the hyper-competitive Big Ten. I mean, it's tougher than you in wrestling. I always say is the toughest sports, I think, to be a member in the Big Ten in terms of competition and having to do it week in and week out and get the best kids. But introduce our audience to your 4 freshmen too, and what they bring to the table, and how you hope they'll complement your team not only this year but down the road.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, usually by now everybody knows who our freshmen are, but we would actually be preparing to play Wisconsin tonight and Minnesota tomorrow if we would have started fall season. This would have been our opening weekend for Big Ten Conference play. So thinking about that almost makes me happy that I was playing golf this morning and not trying to get ready for the 2 monsters of the Midway. But A freshman we had in that came in last spring was Savannah Chacon. She's a backcourt player from Crown Point High School and one of the best defensive players that was in the state last year. And she's a tough competitor, so we're happy that she's in here. She's one of our 6 backcourt players that we have on our roster. Then we have Taylor Trammell, who's from Lexington, Kentucky. She's about 6'2", and she's touching close to 10'6", which is really good. We've had very, very few freshmen that have come into our gym that could touch 10'6". As a matter of fact, that's where Danielle Catino was when she got here. She eventually got up to 10'11", which was as high of a leaper as we've ever had. But Taylor is somebody that may be able to play this year and contribute in the middle. She's a middle blocker, huge hands and long arms, just a lot of the attributes that you're looking for in a middle blocker and a great person on top of that. Another middle blocker that kind of fits that mold as well is Lourdes Myers. She comes from over near Cleveland, Ohio. It's actually Alliance, Ohio, which is a town I really hadn't heard much of before. We started to recruit Lourdes, but Lourdes is 6'3", a little longer than Trammell, jumps about as well. She's about 10'5" on the jump meter. She's been out a lot this early season because of a lower leg injury, and that's been frustrating. But again, it's a long haul, and we want to make sure that she's healthy, and we're not overdoing it with her. But it's frustrating for her and frustrating for us. But she's a big-time athlete. Both of those two are big-time athletes, and you don't have to be an expert in volleyball to walk in the gym and watch them jump and hit and figure out that they're really good recruits. And then Molly Brown is our 4th freshman, and Molly is from Northwood High School up in northern Indiana, and her father was a Boilermaker and really wanted his daughter to be part of our program, and she has been the real surprise of our camp. We knew that she was pretty good, but we didn't know that she had a wingspan of 6'6.5", and is as coachable as she is, and she's making great progress. So as a coaching staff, we're elated with the freshmen. I think the class was ranked 19th or 20th in the country for what that's worth. I put 0 stock in what other people rank recruiting classes. But this one is highly undervalued, in my opinion, according to the experts. And we're looking forward to spending more time with them in the gym.
Yeah, Dave, you set a high bar in West Lafayette since your first season in 2003. By my count, 14 NCAA tournament bids, 5 in a row for you. Tell us, what are the expectations for this edition of your Boilermakers?
Well, because it's an interesting season, I don't think that we've put as much time into setting goals or objectives at this point in time. As a head coach, I always have an idea what to expect. This can be one of our best teams. There's absolutely no doubt. We lost Blake Moeller and Savannah Chacon, who are both really good athletes, middle hitters, but everyone else returns from last year. And we had a good squad last year. Went to the Sweet 16. We ended up getting beat by #1 ranked Baylor at their gym and played them pretty tough. We feel like we can compete with anybody. We bring so many strengths in the sport of volleyball that are important: serving, passing, defense, setting, size, talent, great chemistry within this team, things that you want to have. Our coaching staff and our players can't wait to walk in the gym every day. That's the kind of team that we're dealing with right now, and it's been that way now for a couple of seasons, that we just love being in the gym with this group. But then you look at the fact that Wisconsin will probably be ranked #1 in the country. I think Nebraska will be ranked #2 in the country. Minnesota will be 3 or 4, and Penn State will be probably 6 or 7. And then I think that, we would fall into the rankings right after that. I think us and Penn State are pretty similar, and I don't think there's a remarkable difference between us and Nebraska and Wisconsin and Minnesota. We beat Nebraska here a year ago in a good match, and the matches we lost to those other schools were all close a year ago. But all those programs have a lot back. And so this will be a tremendous year in the Big Ten Conference. And it's interesting. This is something, I don't know if you probably know this because you do your homework. This doesn't count as a year of eligibility for fall athletes. Yeah. And that's put a monkey wrench into a lot of recruiting things, because we just don't know, what does that project? Does that mean all of our players will stay another year? No, that's not going to happen. But how are you going to determine who you want to have come back so that you're not going to be able to scholarship incoming freshmen, because it's going to get real tricky. But despite the fact that they decided this wasn't going to be a year that would count, it's still going to be a significant year. It's going to be a meaningful season. As you mentioned, we're going to play 20 or more Big Ten matches, and hopefully we'll get in the NCAA tournament that's going to have 48 teams. So it's interesting that the NCAA decided to do that ahead of time, even before they decided what the season would look like. They said that we're going to give fall sport athletes a free year. And I'm glad they did, because we got a lot of really good players here right now. And if it works out the way we like, then some of those are going to get to spend a 5th year here with us.
Does that present because it's obviously a financial crunch time, because you've got to be able to balance that and determine that as well. How does that play into that? And then my second question, because you addressed the eligibility issue, but recruiting itself has changed too. I mean, you're not able to go see kids, official visits, those kind of things are challenges at best at this time.
Yeah, well, the first question would be answered that next year is the only year we'll be able to provide more scholarships than normal.
Right.
Okay, they give a 1-year waiver, and we only have 2 seniors. And certainly one of them I've already talked to. I talked to both of them. One is Caitlyn Newton, who was one of the best players in the Big Ten Conference. And one of my letters of recommendation I was just writing for grad school was for Caitlyn Newton. So we have every intention that Caitlyn will be back again next year. Jenna Otek, we're still discussing, her possibility. She wants to come back, but that money's got to come from somewhere. Okay. Yeah. And if you're like Rondell Moore, there'll be money for you. Okay. Yeah. And if you're somebody else, there may not be. And so that's kind of where we are with that. But the following years, you only have in our sport 12 scholarships. Right. So you can't go extra after the first year. And so you've got to weigh that out. And fortunately, we've got 2 commitments in that class that are juniors right now. And we have, we're okay, because we know we've got 1 person that's going to come back in that class for sure, 2 that probably are not, and then a 4th that we're still working with on there. But right now, we've got our 12, okay? 1 coming back for sure, plus the 2 that are coming in as freshmen that year, and we'll have our 12 unless something changes.
Yeah.
Dave,
Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Dave, you said your season is going to go January 22nd to April 3rd. Selections, I guess, Sunday for you guys, April 4th. But before we came on the air, I asked you about the other conferences in America, the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC. Some of these conferences are playing volleyball right now. And again, how's that dynamic impact your later season? And I guess the NCAA tournament. It'd be interesting to see your perspective and his comments on such a unique season and such a unique aspect of this season.
Yeah, the Big 12, I watched Texas play Oklahoma last night on ESPNU, and the only benefit I see them getting by starting early, one, I think their conferences felt like they wanted to throw them out there, so they had a women's sport team playing along with football, and volleyball seemed to be that sport that was going to do that in those conferences. But they do get some TV exposure because people are just dying for something to put on TV. And so you'll see a lot of volleyball on TV, and it won't be Big Ten unless you're watching the Big Ten Network and they're showing you reruns from some matches in the past. Aside from that, I'm glad we're not playing right now. I think that, for the first time in my career of 18 years, we get a chance to develop some talent and train. Normally we come in for practice might be August 7th or 8th, and by August 25th, we're playing. They're giving us about 2.5 weeks to put a team together and play in matches that are going to impact your NCAA resume. And so I'm really happy that we're not dealing with what some of those coaches are. And the coaches that I've talked to in those leagues wish that the ones that I've talked to would prefer to do what we're doing, which is have all this time to train, get ready, let some of these other people work out some of the kinks in playing competitively and the testing and some of those type of things. So I'm pretty happy with what we're doing right now, Tom.
So then, Dave, those schools are just going to have to then sit on the sideline in early winter while you guys are playing, then they're going to pick back up again for the NCAA tournament?
They're going to have some matches that they'll be able to play as well during the spring.
Okay.
So, for example, the SEC is going to play 8 or 10 matches here in the fall. That's going to allow them another 20 or 18 or 20 that they can play in the spring. They're going to be able to play more. And I think all the ACC is doing is having a short schedule as well, and they'll have ample opportunity to play some when we're playing our 20 matches.
Okay, I got you.
They'll actually get more matches in, but those matches they're playing right now, how will the NCAA tournament look at that? I saw last night where I think it was North Carolina barely beat Virginia Tech, but if it had gone the other way, does that count? Would that have been a bad loss for North Carolina this earlier? It's just hard to know how the committee is going to look at that. What we have heard is that the committee is going to go back and look at historically how many programs from each conference got in and figure out how they're going to do their at-large bids based on history. If that's the case, we bode pretty well because we've traditionally been 8 or 9 teams. But of course, you're going to minimize that because you have 16 less at-large teams getting in.
Yeah, it's a premium there. I mean, it's so dang competitive just to get in the first place, and especially when you have a nightly grudge match in your league. Now, the coaches never want to single out teams that in the league that are dangerous, but obviously the Nebraskas and the Wisconsins and the Penn States are well documented. Minnesota, but who are some of those sneaky teams that put the fear of God in you as you compete? And the answer may be all of the above, I'm sure. But what are some other teams that fans watch?
We have tremendous respect, and this sounds like a coach, for every program in our league. But the Michigan and Michigan States are always tough. Northwestern is a program that has been down. It made a coaching change 4 years ago, and I thought they would turn quicker than they have, but they've got great talent. I expect them to be very, very good next year. I think Ohio State has had 3 years in a row where the recruiting class has been a top 6 or 7 recruiting class. Didn't make the tournament last year, changed coaches, brought in a former Ohio State athlete. And so I think that, I look for them to be really, really tough to beat. But, like I said, you start with the Penn States, Nebraskas, Minnesotas, and then, of course, Wisconsin has emerged. And I feel like we're going to be able to play right with them, but we can't look past the Illinois, the Michigans, Ohio States, and on down the line, and including Indiana and people like that.
All right. Well, time for one more. Fire away.
Yeah, like I said, Dave, you talked about some of the on-court issues, training under these conditions. At the top of your interview, you talked about emotional support. And to just talk about maybe some of those issues that you've had to deal with your student athletes in these so unique times.
Well, we this is, I'm sure it's public information, but we, like every team here at Purdue, we've had people that have had the COVID-19 and then everyone else goes in quarantine. And as you know, the rule is going to be if somebody gets it later, you're going to have an entire team quarantined for the most part for 21 days. And that's going to make it tough to play because it's going to be hard to run a program like we do with 17 players and have one person get sick and them not be in contact with the other players. Yeah. So that's the one thing you're trying to prevent. And our girls for the last 7 weeks have been outstanding. We haven't had a case in seven weeks on our team. And so we've been able to really get after it and get people healthy and get them in better physical condition. But, that the question you asked has to do with culture. This isn't any different than any other year. I mean, we feel like our staff has been built and our program has been built to take care of our athletes. And we're lucky we're at a school like Purdue where we've got a tremendous staff. It's not just your 3 paid coaches, but I could give you a list. We're not football, okay, but we've got a long list of people that are here to help our athletes. And they know, because I make it real clear with our staff, that that's job number 1. It's not winning the Big Ten championship. It's making sure that our people are happy, they're healthy, and they're making good decisions, and that they know that there are people here for them and at any time of the day. But that didn't start this year. I mean, that's something that has been going around for a long time. And I think the people that may be listening, and I know they went to college and some of them may have been athletes, but it's just amazing what kind of emotional things happen with college students today, whether it be depression, which seems to be a big deal now. And, the racial deal here in this country has caused our team, I think, much more unrest than COVID-19 has. And so, that's a conversation, for could go on forever. But I think that, they know that we're here for each other. Their teammates are here for them. And I think we're in a pretty good place despite all that's going on.
Yeah, you got a lot on your plate. Your team does, but yet you're experienced. You're calling on that. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for your time. I always enjoy it. We always end up by, I have another 20 minutes of questions because I like to talk. We'll get you on again because I'd like to talk just also about your vision, not your vision, but where all this goes and how we're going to land on the back end of this. We'll do that maybe later in the fall because your insight is very, very keen on that. Well, best to you and your staff and your team and your family. Thanks so much for joining us on Gold and Black Live. We're going to take a 2-minute break and come back, and we'll be back with Brian Liebert and Tom, and we'll talk a little bit about that guy that Dave Shondell mentioned, Rondale Moore, and more on Gold and Black Live.